As old alliances fade, a new global order is emerging. Canada turns to China, Michigan loses faith in Trump, and Europe moves beyond U.S. influence. Meanwhile, Mexico and China strike back. The balance of power is shifting. Who will take the lead? Canada aligns with China. The U.S. finds itself sidelined in the evolving global oil arena. Canada is undergoing a fundamental transformation in its energy trade dynamics. For decades, nearly 97% of the country's energy exports, worth 176 billion Canadian dollars, were sent exclusively to the United States. However, the recent imposition of a 10% U.S. tariff on Canadian oil and gas has disrupted this long-standing dependence, pushing Canada to seek new partners. Seizing this moment, China has strategically expanded its footprint in Canada's energy sector. Leading the charge is Prochemical, a major Chinese oil refiner now operating in Calgary. The company swiftly secured a supply deal with Suncor, and the first crude shipments to China are scheduled for June 2024. But this is only the beginning. Prochemical is actively engaging with major players like Cenovus, Shell, BP, and ConocoPhillips, using free on-board (FOB) contracts to maintain shipment flexibility. Guiding this expansion is strategist Wang Jia, known for strengthening China's energy ties with Canada in the past. This shift marks a critical turning point. Canada is moving from a single market dependency to a more balanced multipolar approach. While offering new opportunities, this path also demands careful navigation between economic interests and national sovereignty. What do you think about Canada's energy shift and China's growing role? Is this a smart move toward balance or a risk to economic sovereignty? Share your thoughts in the comments. The completion of the Trans Mountain Expansion (TMX) project in early 2024 marked a strategic turning point in Canada's energy policy, stretching nearly 1,200 kilometers and boosting capacity from 300,000 to 890,000 barrels per day. TMX is not just an engineering feat. It's a symbol of Canada breaking free from its near-total dependence on the U.S. market, which previously absorbed over 95% of its oil exports. The new pipeline provides direct access to the Pacific, linking Canada with major Asian energy markets such as China, Japan, and South Korea, countries whose refineries are well-suited to process Canada's heavy crude. As the U.S. increasingly embraces protectionist policies, TMX allows Ottawa to respond proactively, including the launch of a $6.5 billion CAD support package to expand global market access and protect its agricultural sector. Beyond crude oil, Canadian companies like Prochemical are quickly moving into liquefied natural gas, LNG, signaling a more comprehensive, proactive, and globally oriented energy strategy in the TMX era. This shift reflects Canada's growing ambition to become not just a supplier, but a strategic player in the evolving global energy landscape. Canada's push into the global liquefied natural gas (LNG) market is accelerating, spearheaded by the landmark LNG Canada terminal in Kitimat, British Columbia. Backed by a powerful consortium, including Shell, PetroChina, and Mitsubishi, the project is on track to commence exports by late 2025, marking a decisive shift in Canada's energy trajectory. While the country currently exports around 8.6 billion cubic feet of natural gas per day, most of it still flows south to the United States. That dynamic is set to change. New LNG infrastructure, strategically positioned along both Pacific and Arctic coasts, is empowering Canada to bypass traditional routes and directly access high-demand international markets, particularly across the Asia-Pacific region. This includes energy-hungry economies like Japan, South Korea, and China, where demand for clean, reliable gas is growing sharply. Canada's evolution from a raw resource exporter into a competitive global energy player reflects a deeper transformation. By investing in cutting-edge infrastructure and broadening its customer base, Canada is not only securing energy independence, but also reshaping its influence on the world stage. In an increasingly multipolar energy world, Canada is stepping up to become a key supplier in the emerging global order. Disillusionment in Michigan. Voters drift away from Trump. Amid growing discontent. Once a stronghold of Donald Trump's economic populism, Michigan is now a vivid reflection of disillusionment and deepening frustration. In a recent focus group hosted by Axios in collaboration with Engage Sego, many former Trump supporters expressed a sharp sense of disappointment. Some even described it as betrayal. These are not passive observers, but individuals who once placed strong faith in promises of industrial revival, lower living costs, and a renewed national economy. Instead of witnessing a resurgence, they are now facing waves of layoffs, soaring inflation, and a noticeable decline in public services. Their frustration has only intensified with the increasingly controversial role of Elon Musk within the Trump administration. Once seen as a symbol of innovation, Musk is now viewed by many as a destabilizing force accelerating institutional breakdown. With Trump's backing, to many in Michigan, the bold change they once hoped for now feels more like abandonment. The renewal they believed in has given way to a reality marked by economic hardship and a growing sense that the very system they trusted is unraveling before their eyes. One of the most profound sources of frustration among Michigan voters today stems from the complete breakdown of the economic promises they once believed in. Affordable living, once a central pillar of Trump's appeal in the Rust Belt, has dissolved into a painful illusion. Rather than finding relief from rising expenses, families across Michigan are being crushed by relentless cost increases. These are driven in part by the administration's aggressive tariff strategies and intensifying trade confrontations, which have backfired, raising prices on everyday goods, choking local businesses, and unraveling supply chains that once thrived on stable cross-border trade. Job insecurity has spread beyond low-income workers and now threatens the core of the middle class. Michigan's once proud manufacturing sector is shrinking rapidly, while essential public services like healthcare and education face severe underfunding. Even more disturbing is the growing crisis facing veterans, whose reliance on state-supported care has been met with under-resourced facilities struggling to meet even basic needs, leaving many who once served the nation feeling forgotten. The political disillusionment is now out in the open. Lawmakers loyal to Trump have largely disappeared from public view, skipping town halls and evading direct accountability. In response, citizens are creating their own community forums, seeking answers in the void left by their absent representatives. The sense of political abandonment is growing, and with it, a deeper mistrust in the administration that once promised to put them first. To add to the turmoil, Trump's increasingly hostile trade posture toward Canada has sparked public outrage not only in Michigan, but also across the border in Ontario. The once dependable partnership between Detroit and Windsor, two cities historically interlinked by commerce and community, is now fraying under the pressure of protectionist policies. Protests have erupted on both sides of the border, uniting citizens in shared opposition to what they view as a reckless and politically motivated assault on regional stability. This bilateral breakdown serves as a potent symbol of what many in Michigan now believe is the broader failure of Trump's economic nationalism. Rather than restoring dignity and prosperity to the American worker, these policies have isolated communities, alienated allies, and ignited economic conflict where there was once cooperation. For many former Trump supporters, this isn't just a policy failure. It feels like a betrayal of everything they were promised. What's your take on the growing tensions between Michigan and Ontario? Do you think protectionist policies are worth the cost of damaging cross-border unity? Europe charts a historic path, breaking free from U.S. military dependency. Europe is undergoing a significant and historic transformation in its defense doctrine, marking a decisive shift away from long-standing dependence on American military capabilities. With the launch of the Readiness 2030 initiative, backed by an unprecedented 800 billion euros, European nations are signaling not just a fiscal investment, but a broader strategic realignment. This is not merely about building up military strength, it is about reclaiming sovereignty, technological independence, and geopolitical autonomy in a rapidly changing global order. One of the core catalysts behind this shift lies in growing anxieties over the integrity of U.S.-supplied military technology. Revelations of potential kill switches embedded within American defense systems, devices that could hypothetically allow Washington to remotely disable Allied equipment, have sent shockwaves through European capitals. Whether these claims are fully substantiated or not, they highlight a deeper issue: Europe's vulnerability to external control over critical military infrastructure. Such a possibility undermines the very foundation of national sovereignty and has provoked serious debate over the risks of over-reliance on a single supplier, no matter how long-standing the alliance. Prominent voices in Europe are now openly challenging this dependency. Denmark's Defense Committee chair, for instance, has warned that U.S. dominance in the defense export market could easily be weaponized for geopolitical leverage. The sentiment is spreading beyond Europe's borders as well. Canada, a close NATO ally, is reassessing its military procurement strategies, while countries like France and Portugal are actively seeking to reduce their dependence on U.S.-made systems, such as the widely used F-35 fighter jet. These moves reflect a growing consensus that true security cannot be outsourced, especially not in an era of global instability and shifting political alliances. At the heart of this strategic pivot is a broader vision: to build resilient, independent, and technologically advanced European defense capabilities. This means investing not only in military hardware, but also in research, development, and industrial capacity. The aim is to create systems that are not just interoperable within NATO frameworks, but fully autonomous, designed, built, and controlled by European entities with European interests at their core. At the same time, global geopolitical shifts are accelerating Europe's move towards strategic autonomy. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has warned that the U.S. security umbrella is no longer guaranteed. With American foreign policy swinging between administrations, Europe is facing the reality that it may one day have to defend its own borders and values. This awakening is sparking new defense partnerships and a move away from sole reliance on the U.S. For example, Canada's multi-billion-dollar radar deal with Australia highlights a growing trend toward diversified, multipolar defense cooperation. The desire for strategic flexibility is spreading well beyond Europe. Diplomatic tensions are also rising. U.S. military activity in Greenland has sparked backlash from Denmark, exposing how even long-standing allies are becoming wary of Washington's global reach. Still, Europe isn't abandoning its alliance with the U.S., it's redefining it. The continent is preparing for a more fluid world order where power is shared and alliances evolve. Achieving autonomy will take time, unity, and major investment. But the direction is clear. Europe is stepping out of its junior role to take greater responsibility in global security, seeking technological independence and a stronger voice on the world stage. Canada hits back. Trade war with the U.S. reaches new heights. On March 4th, Canada escalated its response to U.S. trade aggression by imposing a sweeping 25% tariff on $155 billion worth of American exports. This move, directly targeting key sectors such as steel, energy, and automobiles, is a clear signal that Ottawa will not remain passive in the face of Washington's increasingly protectionist policies. The automotive sector has been hit especially hard. Major U.S. automakers like Ford, GM, and Tesla are now facing higher costs and worsening supply chain stress, at a time when the industry is already under strain from inflation, parts shortages, and shifting global demand. With annual trade between the two nations reaching nearly $700 billion, the shockwaves from Canada's retaliation are being felt immediately, threatening to destabilize U.S. manufacturing and logistics. Adding to the tension, Ontario has imposed a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the U.S. and warned of a possible complete suspension if the dispute continues. This raises serious concerns for American border states that rely on Canadian energy, exposing vulnerabilities in the region's cross-border infrastructure. Financial markets have reacted with unease. The Canadian S&P/TSX index fell 1.5%, and the Bank of Canada has warned that a prolonged trade war could lead to a 3% GDP contraction within 2 years. In parallel, Canada is launching a strategic media campaign across 12 key U.S. states to highlight the domestic pain caused by Trump's trade policies. By focusing on economic consequences in critical electoral regions, Ottawa hopes to influence American political discourse, signaling that trade wars don't just hurt foreign rivals, but also core U.S. constituencies. Mexico defies Washington, confronting Trump's tariff offensive. Disrupting vital supply chains, Mexico is taking an unyielding approach in response to rising U.S. tariffs, threatening to undermine critical supply chains that closely link the two economies. By zeroing in on sectors like automotive manufacturing and agriculture, where Mexico plays a pivotal supplier role, Mexico aims to amplify inflationary pressures already weighing on U.S. markets. Should these counteractions come to fruition, they could spark significant price surges across American industries and consumer markets. This is far more than symbolic defiance. Mexico's calculated strategy highlights vulnerabilities deep within the U.S. economy, making it clear that Washington's aggressive stance comes with real risks. In pivoting from passive cooperation to active resistance, Mexico is demonstrating a newfound readiness to stand its ground. Refusing U.S. border enforcement demands. In a parallel move, Mexico is flatly rejecting U.S. expectations to act as a de facto humanitarian checkpoint for migrants heading north. Mexican officials have firmly declined to assume responsibility for curbing migration flows toward the U.S. border. This refusal could have sweeping consequences. As America's 2025 election looms, the prospect of a humanitarian and political crisis on the southern border grows more tangible, compounding tensions within the U.S. Mexico's stance highlights mounting regional frustration with Washington's attempts to offload the political burden of its border policies onto its neighbors. Inspiring regional defiance against U.S. influence. More profoundly, Mexico's assertiveness is igniting a wider movement across Latin America. Countries historically wary of U.S. dominance, such as Cuba, Brazil, and Venezuela, are drawing strength from Mexico's example. A collective push for greater independence and regional solidarity is gaining momentum, challenging Washington's long-standing grip on hemispheric affairs. What is emerging is not merely isolated pushback, but a broader awakening throughout Latin America. Mexico, by taking a firm stand, is catalyzing a shift toward regional empowerment and shared resistance against external pressures. A watershed moment in U.S.-Latin American relations. Mexico's forceful countermeasures, its resolute stance on migration, and its role as a catalyst for regional defiance are collectively reshaping the trajectory of U.S.-Latin American relations. The era of uncontested U.S. influence is being met with unprecedented challenges from its southern neighbors, as economic leverage, political determination, and regional solidarity converge. Latin America is signaling that it will no longer accept a subordinate role in Washington's strategic framework. At the heart of this transformation, Mexico is emerging as a key architect of a new, more independent regional order. China strikes back. Tariffs and strategic market domination. China is escalating its countermeasures against U.S. trade aggression by zeroing in on the pillars of the American economy. Through sharp reductions in imports of U.S. soybeans, corn, and pork, Beijing is delivering a painful blow to American farmers, especially those in rural communities where agriculture is a vital economic lifeline. These regions, already grappling with unpredictable markets and climate-driven disruptions, now face intensified financial hardship. Beyond the economic impact, this is a calculated maneuver aimed squarely at amplifying political pressure in pivotal U.S. battleground states as the 2025 elections approach. Simultaneously, China has slapped a 25% tariff on American-manufactured vehicles, directly undermining companies such as Ford, GM, and Tesla. These automakers, already struggling to maintain market share in China, are now losing ground to domestic contenders like BYD and NIO. Bolstered by state subsidies and lower production costs, Chinese manufacturers are widening the gap, reinforcing Beijing's mission to fortify its own industrial base while displacing foreign rivals. American consumers, too, are feeling the sting. With tariffs driving up the costs of essentials, from electronics and groceries to construction materials, household budgets are increasingly under strain, exacerbating inflation and dampening consumer confidence. At the same time, China is not just playing defense. It's accelerating its ascent in advanced industries. Substantial state support is propelling Chinese firms to dominance in sectors like clean energy and electric vehicles. In the global push toward sustainability, Beijing is carving out a leadership role, turning the trade war into an engine for technological and geopolitical advancement. Collectively, these bold steps illustrate China's calculated strategy to undermine U.S. economic influence on several fronts, reshaping global power balances as Beijing advances its vision of leadership in the emerging world order. US-EU trade clash, tariffs on wine, whiskey, and widening divides. Trade tensions between the United States and the European Union are intensifying as Donald Trump threatens to impose a staggering 200% tariff on European wines and champagnes. This move comes as retaliation for the EU's earlier decision to levy duties on American whiskey exports, putting Europe's $13.1 billion wine market in the US at serious risk. For wine producers in France, Italy, and Spain, this is not just a trade dispute. It's a blow to cultural heritage and the economic lifeline of rural communities, where winemaking is often the backbone of local livelihoods. If such extreme tariffs are enacted, many small family-run vineyards could be forced to shut down, and the U.S. market, one of their largest, may become entirely inaccessible. European leaders have responded with strong criticism, warning that this escalating cycle of retaliation threatens to damage not only transatlantic relations, but also the stability of the broader global trade system. Ironically, American winemakers might benefit if European wines become too expensive for U.S. consumers. Domestic producers could seize a greater share of the market, but this short-term gain comes at the cost of long-term trust, reduced diversity in consumer choice, and a weakening of multilateral trade cooperation. Ultimately, this conflict is about far more than wine. It reflects a deeper ideological rift, the return of nationalist trade policies at the expense of international cooperation, and the growing danger of a fragmented global economy where trade becomes a tool of power rather than partnership. Trump's erratic trade dance with Canada, a cycle of threats and retreats. The Trump administration's volatile approach to U.S.-Canada trade relations, characterized by erratic tariff decisions and sudden policy reversals, has deeply unsettled cross-border economic cooperation. Instead of fostering a predictable environment for trade and investment, these actions have created a climate of instability that complicates business planning and damages investor confidence. Canadian officials, long known for their diplomatic restraint, have shifted toward a firmer, retaliatory stance. In response to the U.S.'s unpredictable behavior, Ottawa introduced targeted tariffs, restricted specific imports, and encouraged public boycotts of American products and travel. The consequences were swift. Canadian tourism to the U.S. plunged by 40%, draining billions from American hospitality and retail sectors. But the damage extends beyond tourism. U.S. exporters face increased uncertainty, with many hesitant to invest in cross-border ventures under such unstable conditions. Consumers, too, are bearing the brunt of higher prices resulting from retaliatory tariffs, further exacerbating inflationary pressures at home. More troubling is the broader impact on America's global credibility. Trump's erratic trade behavior and inflammatory rhetoric have cast serious doubt on Washington's reliability as a long-term economic partner. If a trusted neighbor like Canada is treated as an adversary, allies worldwide are left questioning their own standing. This pattern signals more than a bilateral dispute. It reflects a deeper erosion of trust in U.S. leadership on trade. In prioritizing short-term political victories over stable, rules-based cooperation, the administration risks undermining decades of progress in North American integration and weakening America's role in the global economic order.